what Caleb says don't do.
Good morning and welcome to the August 10th, 2022 City Council meeting. We will begin with the invocation from Councilman Curtis, followed by the pledge. If you'll please stand.
Please pray with me. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for our city of Tyler. We ask for wisdom this morning in conducting our council meeting and pray that the decisions that we make this morning contribute to the continued improvement of our community and the well-being of our fellow citizens. We ask for your protection and blessings on our firemen, policemen, and city staff. And Lord, we ask that you guard the health and guide the decisions of our county, state, and national leaders. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we will begin with the minutes from July 13th, 2022.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion by Westbrook, second by Wynn. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. P1.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. This is, so, I didn't know if you wanted to read the item, sir, or just...
Pardon me?
Did you want me to read the item, or do you want me to just jump right in? Okay.
Go for it.
Mayor Warren and City Council, thank you for this opportunity to be before you this morning for one of our most important roles in governing and administering this municipal government. The presentation discussions of the plans and services for the coming fiscal year in the form of our proposed $228 million budget for operations and capital improvements. We are proud of the financial document before you as it details our year ahead. During the past year, we improved our community streets, drainage, parks, and facilities, implemented new community initiatives, and ensured that our public servants had the resources they needed to improve our citizens' quality of life. We are building in that progress on the coming year with a focus on transforming ways we currently operate to increase the safety and well-being of our citizens and businesses. The budget we are presenting today is our map for the year ahead. It states our intentions for the next 12 months, built on forecasts of what we expect using the insight of our past experiences. We built the recommendations in this budget from the guiding themes of the Tyler First at the larger level of the city's growth, and the strategic plan for the next 5 years. With these two documents as our focus, we then develop a plan of services and operations that move in the direction that these plans point towards. We don't always know what the new obstacles will pop up, but yet we continue to use our annual budget document to steer us through these challenges to advance the City of Tyler's vision to be nationally known for our sense of community, commitment to a robust business environment, quality medical care, excellent educational institutions, and the beauty of its public spaces and neighborhoods. The City of Tyler is committed to enhancing the work environment of our men and women in our police and fire departments. We understand that for them to offer our citizens the highest quality service, we must provide them with the necessary resources. While formulating the fiscal year 2023 budget, we asked how we could make improvements to ensure these resources were available. For our police department, we looked at how we procured the equipment necessary for our officers to perform their duties. In prior years, we have included capital purchase requests related to body cameras, tasers, and other necessary duty requirements in our budgets. These requests usually replace the oldest equipment first and seldomly replaced every unit in the entire department. In the 2023 budget, we have found an innovative solution that allows our officers to always be equipped while they are on duty. Part of this budget allows for a $2 million capital outlay over the next 5 years. This capital outlay will act like a subscription service for our officers in replacement of tasers, body cameras, license plate reader systems, and more. We will equip our officers with brand new equipment, and if any time the equipment is no longer good due to damage or age or other factors, we can send these back to the manufacturer and have them replaced at no additional charge. This will allow us to keep the necessary equipment in the hands of our officers for them to perform at the highest level without worrying about if they're going out on duty without the equipment required. And as a personal aside, I was able to take a ride along one night with our police officers a couple of months ago. And Sergeant Chuck Boyce, who you all know and love, talked to me about the one thing that he asked for in this budget. And it was the ability to have a taser that would be able to shock twice instead of once. Right now, our officers are equipped with tasers that have the ability to shoot once, and then if that misses or doesn't work, then it has to sometimes get more hands-on, or it could go to even more deadly circumstances. And so with this, the equipment that we're asking for to move towards, this will then provide a 2-shot taser that will allow for them to be able to have another opportunity if for whatever reason the suspect doesn't go down. And so this thus protecting our officers and also those that they're coming in contact with that much more. In the 2023 budget, we're also continuing to add firefighter positions to help staff our new ladder truck, which should be completed and delivered sometimes in the next fiscal year. In addition to the new fire recruits, we take a look at how we replace one of the major pieces of equipment all firefighters needed to perform their jobs, which is how we replace our fire engines. In the past, we've replaced fire engines a number of different ways, from borrowing money to finance, the purchase of fire trucks to paying cash, and trying to replace at least one fire engine per year. With the current supply chain issues the economy is experiencing, and after discussion with fire engine manufacturers, we determined that from purchase to delivery of a new fire engine has increased from 12 months to 24 months. This means the replacement schedule the city had initiated in the 2021 fiscal year was now altered by forces outside of our control. In the 2023 budget before you, we were able to find ways to cash fund the purchase of 2 new fire engines so that we could follow our fire engine replacement schedule and not withhold resources necessary for our firefighters to perform a high-quality service our citizens expect. There's also funding in this budget for necessary roofing repairs at 2 locations, our Fire Administration Building and Fire Station 6 off Van Highway, which helps service the northern parts of Tyler. When formulating our budget, one of the areas we analyze is how well we are spending funds based off of what the citizens of Tyler view as the important factors of our community. We know our community is highly invested in public safety, and therefore our budget should also reflect those views. The information presented in front of you just highlights how we have listened to our citizens. In our budget formulation in fiscal year 2019 and 2020, we were focused on paying off leases for equipment related to public safety. And of course, in 2021, the COVID pandemic occurred. In fiscal year 2022 and 2023, with the obligations from previous lease agreements on fire and police equipment paid off, we've been able to cash fund requests for public safety, whether that be for positions such as our homeless outreach officer and computer forensic detective that were funded for last year, or equipment such as laptops and police cruisers and fire engines that allow our public safety staff to provide the highest quality service to our citizens, businesses, and visitors during their most difficult times. Another issue in our community that has been brought forward to us in recent years has been how we help to clean up the blighted properties throughout the city. We are able to present in this budget dedicated funding to help us achieve this goal for the citizens. As part of the 2023 budget, we have set aside $200,000 to help with the removal of derelict structures throughout the city. In the past, we've had access to federally funded backed grant funds to help demolishing what we known as substandard structures, but these funds were restricted for use on residential properties in certain areas of the city. This new program allows the city to remove these substandard structures from all areas of the city and allows for removal of commercial structures. As you may recall, just recently one of the structures, the Tyson House on Irwin Street, had an incident that the Tyler Fire Department had to respond to. While responding to the fire at the dilapidated structure, 3 of our firefighters fell through a hole in the floor into a flooded basement. At that point, all efforts inside the Tyson house went into search and rescue for our firefighters. With these funds, the priority for the city are not structures that have a negative appearance, but structures that create a public safety concern for all citizens of Tyler. Now I'd like to take some time to highlight some quality of life improvements in our community, starting with the updates to the Rose Complex. The W.T. Brookshire Convention Center, which Council approved in fiscal year 2022, will be completed in the first quarter of fiscal year 2023, and our first event should be held in January 2023. We have included in this budget funding to make some updates to the Tyler Rose Garden Center as well. These updates include upgrades to our elevator at the Rose Garden for ADA accessibility, and remodel of the kitchen areas in the Rose Garden Center to make repairs and provide a more appealing look to these dated areas. Also during 2023, we have capital projects scheduled to take place at a few of our parks. Included in this budget, we are proposing renovations for the Lindsay Park softball fields, Pollard Park redevelopment, upgrades to Winters Park, all of which are funded by our Parks Capital Improvement Fund. The city created this fund last year to ensure our parks have dedicated funds for maintenance and operations, or maintenance and improvements, pardon me. These funds are collected from the use at the city-owned landfill. There are also upgrades scheduled for P.T. Cole Park, which we funded through our Community Development Block Grant, similar to what is going on with the Noble E. Young Park this year and M.J. Scott Park last year. Since Winter Storm Uri and the spring 2022 windstorm that Tyler experienced, the city has seen an increase in the number of trees that have been damaged or died and need to be removed as they pose hazards to our public. So far in fiscal year 2022, the city has spent approximately $100,000 on removal of these trees. These funds were not budgeted in the current year, and our Parks Department had to cut funding in different services to cover the cost of the removal of the trees, along with contingency from the city's general fund. We have identified numerous other trees in the city's parks, cemeteries, and other public spaces that still need to be removed as they are ongoing liabilities, and therefore we have added $100,000 to the fiscal year 2023 budget funding for the removal of these trees. Our Tyler Water Utilities represents 4 functions of providing quality water and protecting the environment and public. The first of which is our water treatment process, which includes our water sources of Lake Tyler and Lake Palestine to our Golden Road and Lake Palestine water treatment plants. Next, we have 742 miles of water distribution lines that connect to our residents and our businesses. We continue funding upgrades to our meters and meter boxes, our 2-inch water line replacement program, and water repairs in the areas where we are conducting our asphalt overlay program. This year's cash-funded capital projects include filter replacements at the Golden Road water treatment plant and rehabilitation of the Shiloh Road elevated storage tank, and a raw water pump replacement at Lake Tyler. Our capital projects for wastewater collections during fiscal year 2023 will focus on plant upgrades at both wastewater treatment plants. These projects include upgrades to the chlorination and dechlorination process and primary clarifier rehabilitation for the Southside wastewater treatment plant. Our Westside wastewater treatment plant will see lift station pump replacements, the first stage of the final clarifier rehabilitation, and construction of a new administration area that will include both labs and offices. With the increase in population and businesses comes an increase in hard services, which increases the amount of water our stormwater system must be able to handle. As part of the 2023 budget, we are cash funding almost $1 million in stormwater maintenance projects. This is the first time we've been able to include specific maintenance items in our operating budget and fund them at such a level. Ensuring proper maintenance is performed on these assets will translate to long-term savings. Our commitment to our largest infrastructure investment, our streets, continues with the 2 cents of the property tax rate set aside towards our Quality Street Commitment Fund. It is expected that we will generate $1.8 million towards asphalt seal coating and crack sealing in the coming year. This will provide for approximately 25 lane miles of streets repaired and maintained in our city, which, in addition to the $3.5 million budgeted from the half-cent sales tax fund for overlay projects. We developed a more extensive Brick Street repair program last fiscal year and continue building it for the coming year. We're increasing funding for the Brick Streets enhancements to $595,000. We understand the importance of our brick streets and how they tie to our character and sense of history, and are excited that we are able to set aside funding to address their maintenance in a greater capacity. This is also the first year we'll be designating funding for alleyway repairs in the city. This will be an ongoing, prioritized process for repairing alleys each year, but marks the first year that we are stating that this is an asset that we need to improve where it impacts our residents and our businesses. The city's half-cent fund has provided for the funding of capital projects in Tyler since 1995. We anticipate funding approximately $26.3 million in capital projects during fiscal year 2023. We spoke earlier about items included in the operating budget for street improvements and stormwater maintenance. And our half-cent fund capital project for 2023 includes an additional $21.9 million in street and stormwater drainage funding. This means we're funding approximately $25 million in maintenance and improvements on two of our city's biggest assets. You can see this reflected in the projects listed above. Our existing project list included in the third year of our traffic signal modernization plan, storm drainage improvements on Keaton Avenue into Charles Street, and a plan to improve the drainage on West Mud Creek. Our newly added projects include improving connections in neighborhoods around Tennahaw Street and around Hankerson Street, along with adding an additional turn lane on New Copeland Road. The half-cent's 10-year plan projects for $159 million of capital improvements, all of which are cash funded and require no general obligation debt. We understand that none of the items highlighted above matter if you do not have quality staff to ensure these projects stay the course. That is why in fiscal year 2023, we are taking a long look at what we can do to retain and attract staff that embody the call to serve spirit. To help staff in the current economic climate, we begin by offering a 5% base pay increase to our civil service staff, and our non-civil service staff will receive up to 5% base pay increase based off of their annual performance evaluations. We're also including funding for a comprehensive position study that will go beyond looking at what market values are for our positions and assist us in position alignment throughout the entire city compared to the siloed way of aligning only through a department. Finally, in this budget, we are including a new health insurance plan for our employees, which includes a health savings account option. For fiscal year 2023, sales tax revenue continues to be the main funding stream for our general fund activities. The general fund are the services that do not generate their own revenue as our own enterprise funds do, and include such functions as police, fire, parks, library, municipal court, streets, and traffic control. Our projections for property taxes based on the rate I'll discuss in a minute are approximately 31% of the general fund budget. We looked at how overall increases in funding compared to the increases in public safety budgets earlier, and it's interesting to note that while we focus on ensuring that those individuals have the resources they need, our property tax only covers less than half of the expenditures that the police and fire departments need. This is why we continue to work on different revenue streams for our general fund services to protect the franchise fees, grants, and other revenue opportunities beyond property tax. Before we get into the proposed property tax rate discussion, I think it would help if we looked at the change in our taxable value. Historically, the changes in property tax value have increased approximately 3% to 4% per year. We've had some years that have been outside of that range because of one-time items added to the tax rolls. For instance, 3 years ago, taxable values increased 6% due to values being added back to our total for ETMC properties, changing status from non-taxable to taxable. Then we went right back to the 3% to 4% range. This year has been different to say the least. We have all heard stories over the past year how much prices have increased on existing homes locally and throughout the state. In fact, you probably felt that increase yourself on your own home or properties that you may own. This chart highlights that abnormal increase that we have seen. The change in taxable values we experienced is the largest increase in 15 years. Our average home value went from $218,000 to $259,000, which is a 19% increase. Now, the thing about taxable values is when they change, they do not change the same for everyone. If you asked your neighbors, their taxable value would be different, and more than likely, the appraised value change they experience would be different for each one of them. Because of the nuance, the tax rate we're about to discuss will affect each property owner differently as we use averages of all appraised value changes. We are recommending a property tax rate decrease for the coming year to provide for the enhancement of services discussed earlier that we have built into this proposed budget. Your current ad valorem property tax rate is 26.99 cents per $100 valuation, and we're proposing through this budget to adopt a rate of 26.185 cents per $100 valuation. During the legislative session of 2019, the amount a municipality could raise a property tax rate without automatically having to hold an election was lowered from 8% to 3.5%. You may notice that the proposed tax rate is approximately 7% higher than the no new revenue rate of 24.4811 cents per $100 valuation. Part of the legislation passed in 2019 allowed for municipalities to capture any amount between the proposed rate and the voter approval rate that was not used during a fiscal year for the 3 preceding years. During fiscal year 2021, the city adopted a tax rate of 25.90 cents, which was a 0.09 cent decrease from fiscal year 2020 and lower than the calculated no new revenue rate of 26.1091 cents for fiscal year 2021. The difference between the adopted rate and the fiscal year 2021 voter approval rate of 27.095 cents was 1.195 cents. That difference is is considered the increment rate, and the city has the option to recapture that 1.195 cent difference anytime before fiscal year 2024. We exercised part of this option when we set last year's tax rate, and we still have an unused increment of 0.7639 cents we are proposing to use for this year. The use of the voter approval rate and the remaining increment for the property tax rate allows the city to weather the expected recession and volatile impact on our sales tax revenues for the coming year. This property tax rate is the lowest of cities over 15,000 population in Texas and represents the values of the blueprint as set in 1995. Our property tax rate is significant as it does not have any debt components associated with it. For every other tax rate that is set in the state of Texas, from counties, cities, and school districts, nearly every one of them will have a portion set for debt repayment or interest in seeking rates. The city of Tyler has every dollar collected on its property tax levies going straight to the operations for the public. Every penny paid by our citizens is used towards maintenance and operation of city services. When we looked earlier at the funding makeup for the general fund, the biggest source of the city's revenue is from sales tax. Sales tax makes up 46% of the revenue generated to pay for police, fire, streets, traffic, and other general fund departments. With such a heavy reliance on sales tax, we take a conservative approach on estimating what our revenues might be for the next year. For fiscal year 2023, we're only estimating a 1.5% increase in our sales tax revenue. We have seen major increases in sales tax this year that we are spurred on by actions taken to keep our economy healthy during the pandemic. These actions have ended, and until we know where the normal is now, we prefer to err on the side of caution. With our agreement with the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, on the wastewater collection system consent decree in 2016, we have increased our rates on water and wastewater services for the past 5 years to pay for the cost involved in operations and capital improvements. We still compare very favorably for the rest of water and wastewater services prices in Texas. Using the Texas Municipal League annual utility cost survey, we see that our rates are lower on residential water fees and similar or lower on wastewater rates depending on usage as compared to other cities' utility rates. For the coming fiscal year, we're not proposing any increases on the base rates for water or wastewater service. Those rates will remain flat per usage for our customers. We are implementing, though, phase 1 of our uniform volumetric rate conversion, which is a change from our current declining rate structure. The declining rate structure provides for the more water you use, the less you pay per gallon. The state of Texas has pushed for utility rates to be designed to encourage water conservation for our water resources throughout Texas, and we are the last city in the state to have a rate structure that is not water conservation based. There are 2 options for water conservation based models that could be considered: the inclining rate structure or the uniform volumetric rate structure. With the inclining rate structure, the customer would pay higher amounts at different tiers for the amount used. Thus, the more you use, the higher you pay per gallon. For the uniform volumetric rate structure, you're paying the same amount for each gallon you use. We are proposing the structure for our customers as it provides greater fairness and captures the cost of water production more accurately. With this, all water customers, with the exception of our high-volume industrial users, will pay the same volumetric rate for each consumption tier. This means if you and your neighbor both use 5,000 gallons in a billing period, your volumetric water charge will be the same. This puts residents and commercial entities on equitable footing when paying for the treatment of our water and wastewater. This budget does include a $5.08 increase on the regulatory compliance fee, which is directly tied to the debt associated with the EPA consent decree work on the wastewater collection system. And as we talked about earlier, more and more of the development in the city is soaking up less and less of the rainwater. To keep our stormwater drainage facilities maintained, we are requesting to increase our stormwater collection fee by 1%. We are proposing a $1.28 increase to our residential waste collection fee as part of the budget. This will be the second year of a 2-year program we put in place for increase on our solid waste fees. As a comparison, for our solid waste rates for residential pickup of 31,022 customers, we offer a premium service at considerably low monthly rate that provides 2 collections per week. Our solid waste staff constantly receives high marks during the citizen surveys, always delivering top-rated services and demonstrating their call-to-serve commitment with outstanding customer service. As per the budget and tax rate adoption schedule per state statutes, the council has 2 actions it must take today. It must adopt a proposed rate that it becomes the ceiling for consideration and further debate and to use for publication purposes. And the council must set a public hearing for the budget and tax rate. Staff recommends holding the public hearings at your next regularly scheduled city council meeting on August 24th and the second public hearing at your meeting on September 14th. We expect to bring you the tax rate and budget to the council for consideration at your meeting on September 14th. I do want to extend my deep appreciation to my budget team of Kedrick Trimble and Lauren Justice for their countless hours of taking the budget proposals from each department and working to refine these into the document you have before you today. In addition, I note the incredible work in showcasing our budget story as shown in this presentation developed by Julie Goodgame and Blake Cathy. I also provide my gratitude to you, the City Council. You provide direction and priorities in conversations, deliberations, and ideas throughout the year that set the stage for the budget we provided. Our focus on employees, infrastructure, public safety, and continuous improvement of our services reflects your vision for this community. I thank you for your service and insight on behalf of the citizens of Tyler. It's a privilege to serve you and present this budget for fiscal year 2023 programs and services for your consideration.
Thank you, Ed. Great presentation. I do not have any cards from the public to speak on this, but I do welcome discussion and questions for Ed if you have questions. But, you know, I would like to start the discussion by simply making a couple of comments. Number one, police and fire, as we all know, is the citizens like the job that our police and firemen are doing. And when you think of police and fire and other staff, every one of these people have a choice on where they work. And they can work in other communities or they can work in Tyler. And, you know, my desire is that you can turn left and go to Longview or Hallsville or Marshall, or you can take a right and go to Tyler. And our desire is for these people to take a right and come to Tyler. And to do that, we have to pay competitive rates, and we have to do things to attract the personnel. You know, several years ago, we struggled in our engineering department, and we were short engineers. And what did we do? We go do a study and realized we weren't paying enough. And so we upped the salary for engineers, and now we have more engineers and have a great staff. So we have to make decisions to attract people from the private sector and to keep them here and to have the retention. The other thing that I'm really excited about with this budget is the $200,000 for substandard structures. And Ed talked about the Tyson house and the firemen falling through the floor. And to hear the story of the firemen saying, Mayday, Mayday, and saying, this is the time where we go try to get the firemen out of the water. And you hear this and it makes you realize we have got to get rid of these substandard structures. And this is the first time that I'm aware of, other than federal funds, that we've actually put money in the budget to get rid of these substandard structures. And it's not only because of the safety aspect of it, but it's the blight part of it. And, you know, I've always been a proponent for improving the appearance of our city, and one way to do that is to get rid of the blight. The infrastructure piece, we continue to spend money on infrastructure, which is absolutely necessary. But one thing we're doing this year that we haven't done in the past is we're actually spending more money on drainage. And I know drainage is a big concern for everyone up here. And when things come to planning and zoning or come to us, one of the biggest discussions is drainage. What's it going to do to my property? And so as we grow and there's more concrete and all that, water's got to go somewhere, and we've got to spend more money on drainage. So I love to see that. And finally, something that's very personal to me is our brick streets. And we've really increased the amount of money on brick streets because they are falling apart, and we have not spent money on brick streets really in the past 10 years. We've started last year, and now we're increasing that amount. And for any of you that live here or come here, you know that the brick streets represent our history and our culture and our heritage, and people that travel here, they love the brick streets. May not be the smoothest things in the world, but that's okay. It's part of our history. So all this to say, I think this is a very responsible budget. I think it's forward-thinking, and I think one of the main things to me is in this whole budget, I see an investment in people. And I've already mentioned about the raises and retention and all that, but I think it's very important that we invest in our employees and invest in our citizens and invest in our infrastructure. And what I like about our staff is if you walk down the hall on any given day, you may hear laughter in somebody's office, and you may hear people joking around. The staff plays hard and works hard, and I love to hear laughter, and I love to hear people having and enjoying their job and wanting to stay here because they enjoy their job. So I'm very thankful for staff, and I don't want anybody to be leaving. So I'll just start off the discussion with that, and I'll open it up to any other council members.
I'll follow up on and certainly agree with the fire and police, but also I would say to people, citizens that are listening today and watch this later, to realize that, in a lot of cities, there's the traditional statement, you got a bloated city, state, whatever government. And I want people to know that is not the case in the city of Tyler. I mean, we've run an extremely lean budget for a long time, which is great. But when you do that, it doesn't leave a lot of money to pay people. And that's great until you look around and see empty departments, empty chairs in offices, then jobs not being done. So if you want quality people and you want your services and you want jobs to get done, you have to pay for that. And so that's part of what we're doing today.
I'll echo those comments. I mean, our staff are our greatest asset. The staff, police, fire, and other in the city of Tyler are our greatest asset. Ed, I do have a couple of questions for you in regards to the items on the police side that you mentioned and the upgrades there. Is there any value in resale of any of the components that are going to be replaced? That's question one. And then, like the mayor said, I applaud the money set aside to raise the derelict buildings. What's the process? And so everyone understands a property that has been tagged by the city that the city ends up tearing down. What's the process for that owner, the city moving forward with that? Can the city sell the property, place a lien on it, so everybody understands what goes on there?
Great questions. So the first of which in regards to kind of the equipment that will be replaced from the police department. That is our capital equipment that we own. That then gets declared as far as surplus. We make some of it they may want to keep around just to have as backups, especially maybe some of the old tasers or the like. That's going to be something they'll go through, but then they'll work with our purchasing department with the declaration of that as surplus to then put that out for sale. And typically with some of this stuff, there's smaller departments, smaller communities that would be glad to purchase it or be willing to, so they can be able to get that into their system. So yes, we'll put that up for auction, and see what we can be able to get retrieve for that. Similar we do for police vehicles and some of the other things that we take out of our system that still have a little bit of life left to them. And like I said, we'll find a nice home in usually a smaller community. The second question related to kind of substandard structures. And yes, the state of Texas actually has kind of a system set out that we would still go through this, whether it be through what we typically go through neighborhood services for in areas that are in our moderate to low income areas as defined by HUD. But the process still remains the same, which is we come across a property that is substandard. We then tag it, start a conversation with the property owner on, these are things that you need to do to bring this property up to just kind of basic levels of being able to inhabited by someone or be able to be used by someone. They are given a timeline that they can then go with. If they do not follow that timeline, if they go off of that, for example, and are not able to make any changes or show any progress towards making those upgrades, then we will then take it to our neighborhood revitalization board, which you already have that's in existence, that then will hear them out. They have an opportunity for a public hearing to make their case before a group of citizens. If those citizens want to give them more time, they can. And so the clock begins again for the work that they can do on that structure. And if they, same process, if they do not meet that, if they fall behind on that schedule that was agreed to, and not showing any progress towards it, then the neighborhood revitalization board can declare that that structure be torn down. So they would then give the order for the demolition. The city would then move forward with the demolition and tear it down. We would place a lien on the property. We do not take possession of the property. We just, as far as put a lien on to reclaim our costs that are associated with the demolition costs. Over time, then you kind of see what happens with the property in regards to does somebody else come along and purchase it, pay off the lien. Sometimes lien forgiveness is asked and requested for certain properties around our community. And so that's kind of a case-by-case review that's done on those. And that kind of gets you to then the demolition. And what happens afterwards and everything, what they do with that property then becomes a different situation in of itself. Does that help?
Other comments for the city manager?
Well, I just simply want to commend you and your team. Again, you already recognized the hard work of putting this budget together and the presentation. You know, as it's been said, our greatest resource and greatest asset are our employees. And so I wanted to ask you one question. In the budget, are your shock adjustments at a level that will guarantee retention? So that won't become an issue? You know,
We were talking earlier from the legal perspective of we don't like to give guarantees. So I don't want to say with 100% certainty. But the gist of what you were going with there, sir, I think is exactly kind of where this is intended to. This will be the final shock adjustments for phase 3 and 4, especially of a lot of our kind of our lower paid positions that should be able to help kind of keep them in those. In addition to that, we also have the other study that's coming out that we're looking at. In fact, we began quite just a very good relationship with the city of Longview, with their city management team, and they're actually moving forward with the same. And so we've been in conversation about what can we do to make sure that our pays are not overly competitive with each other, especially for, you know, not necessarily with police and fire, where there will be always some level of competition, but with the other positions to make sure that we are kind of staying in alignment and that we are able to continue doing what we can for both cities here, the major cities here in East Texas, to attract good utility. Utilities is our big one. That's the reason I kind of focused on that one. The streets and other staff to be able to get into those positions. A lot of what we're kind of really working towards, and the shock adjustments really help with, but we'll still be continuing evaluating are those that require certifications and licenses. Those positions still are in high demand, and retention of those has been a difficulty to, and so that one I think you'll probably still see some continued work on to see what we can do to improve our ability to attract and retain for those positions that have licenses and certifications.
Well, I just want to commend you on the team that you've assembled and your key leaders, and also the teams under each of those that are truly the face of the city and provide the call to serve spirit that we have here in the city of Tyler. So thank you, Ed.
Thank you, sir. By the way, this is Councilman Westbrook. We were talking about this. This is the last budget. Six budgets are working through this. And so thank you, sir, for your input on these and just the work that you provided behind the scenes.
Any other comments before we proceed?
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is my next to the last. I got
I know. You've got one more.
Oh, man.
We've already told you that next year we don't expect to be as rosy.
Exactly. But I wanted to, kind of echo what everybody else has said about, we commend the staff for such an awesome job this year. But I kind of want to take it from a different standpoint. I want to applaud this council that we work, that we have here. And I'm sure some of y'all been reading in the news about some of the other council in other cities that are going through turmoil and being in the news. And that's one thing I can say about the city of Tyler. You've never, ever heard about the city of Tyler or city council being in the news for fighting or, not showing up for meetings and not even having enough people to have a quorum. So I just want to applaud these council members and thank them for their service and also thank our staff for what they do for us.
Some people may not realize it, but all of us that we're up here, we're all volunteers. We don't get paid to do this. So it is we love doing it. We love our city and thank you for your comments. Any other?
Mr. Mayor, I thought you said I did. That's why you got me up here.
My father used to say that pay comes in a different form, so our pay comes in a different form.
That's right.
I'd like to join in if none of the other colleagues have anything to say. Do you, Mr. Attorney Henny?
Quickly, I'll just echo what Councilman Curtis said. It's one thing when department heads and departments come to you with a wish list and a Christmas list and they want everything, and I applaud the city of Tyler. When y'all really sit down and laser focus on what the priorities are and what actually is needed and take that into consideration with the budget that we have and the tax rate that we have, because with the tax rate that we have, we are able to attract citizens and businesses from across the state to come here, and that says a lot because other cities are not able to do that. So thank y'all.
So with that being said, I'd like to offer a motion, was what I was about to say. No other
Okay.
comments. So I agree with everything that everyone said. So with that being said, I'll offer a motion that we accept the fiscal year of 2022-23 that our city manager has presented to council.
And there actually is, the state of Texas always wants to make sure that they tie you down as much as possible. And so there's actual,
I've got
has to be
I've got wording here.
verbatim.
And I'm going to read this wording, and then I'll let you make the motion since you've made the motion. First of all, thank you, Ed. Thanks, Kedrick, Lauren, Blake, Stephanie, Julie, just everybody that's been involved in this budget process. It's been a big deal. So just thank you to everyone.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept the presentation of the fiscal year 2022-2023 proposed budget?
Mr. Mayor, I offer a motion that we accept the 2022-23 proposal for the fiscal year that has been presented by our city manager.
And I'm going to just add to that, this is just the presentation
The presentation.
of the budget this year. We've got 2 more coming up, which is
Yes.
a part of your script.
You're setting the
Okay.
public, and so which one, because there's today you have to do the public hearings, setting those, and the tax rate ceiling for when you call the public hearing. So which one is the motion that they're?
Presentation.
I'm doing the 3 in order in which I have been given.
This is the motion
Yeah.
on the presentation.
That's fine.
Is that fine?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, so we're good with, okay, this is, okay, we got a motion by McKellar, second by Curtis. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Second action item, I will accept a motion to schedule public hearings on the proposed property tax rate of 26.1850 cents per $100 of assessed value and the proposed budget on the August 24th and September 14th, 2022 council agendas.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by McGee, second by Wynn. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Action item number 3 Is there a motion to place proposals to adopt an ad valorem tax rate of 26.1850 cents per $100 of assessed value and the fiscal year 2022-23 budget as action items on the September 14th, 2022 City Council meeting?
Mr. Mayor, I so move.
Second.
Got a motion by Westbrook, second by Wynn. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we will proceed with our meeting and go to M1. Kedrick.
Right, Mayor, Council, you have item M1 before you. This is our quarterly revenue and expenditure report for the quarter ending June 30th. The forecast in your budget package are the absolute most recent forecast. These numbers are as of June 30th. There shouldn't be any huge differences, maybe with the exception of water utilities, but we'll go into that as we go through the report. This report accounts for about 70% of the appropriations for our 2021-2022 budget. And it compares actuals to actuals, for the same period as last year. Also, it gives you a comparison of our budget to what we're estimating in the fiscal year. So we'll just kind of hit some of the highlights of our major funds. General fund, revenues from all sources. All right, general fund. So revenues from all sources. We're expecting revenues to be about $4.5 million greater than budget. On our expenditures, excluding our transfers, just regular expenditures, we're expecting those to be about $1.4 million less than budget. And as you look in your packet, you'll see that we'll be requesting some budget amendments on September 14th, simply because we're transferring some of the fund balance from the general fund over to Fund 102 to help pay for some capital items that we've got in our budget. And as you'll note in one of the transfers, our budget for Fund 102 is $343,000. We're actually going to transfer about $2.5 million. So we'll ask for a budget amendment for that on September 14th. That'll be part of our budget adoption ordinance. There's always a cleanup portion for the current year in that ordinance. Also, the cemetery fund is struggling, and so we're going to need to put some additional dollars there above and beyond what was budgeted. We had budgeted $200,000. We need to transfer $200,000. And then our property and facility fund, the same there. We'll have to budget is $101,000. We'll need to transfer about $400,000 over there. So we'll be asking for budget amendments on all of those items. Utility fund, we're expecting revenues to be about $1.1 million greater than budget. Obviously, that's a little bit higher than our last forecast we had because of the drought that we've got going on. We've seen increased sales there. The expenditures plus transfers for water utilities is going to be about 3.3 less than budget. See if there's anything I need to mention there. Okay. Solid waste, we're expecting revenues to be about $748,000 greater than budget. We're expecting expenditures to be about $580,000 greater than budget. Some of that is our fuel surcharge. The fuel surcharge kicks in over $2.50 a gallon.
So you see it on the revenue side, but also we have increased fuel costs. There's a few other line items, but those are probably the major things to note there for the solid waste fund. Airport fund, we're expecting revenues to be about 200,000 greater than budget. Also, we're expecting expenditures to be 46,000 less than budget. Development services, we're expecting revenues to be 650,000 greater than budget. Expenditures to be about 89 or 90,000 less than budget. Hotel tax fund, this is always a great fund to talk about because it seems to exceed our expectations. We're expecting revenues to be almost $500,000 greater than budget. Expenditures are expected to be 850,000 less than budget as well. And some of that savings is just due to the we're not quite complete. We won't quite be complete with the convention center, so that a lot of that we're saving will be used in the next fiscal year on the convention center. Employee benefits fund, this is one that we always hate to talk about, but we have to. Expenditures or revenues are expected to be about 1.67 million greater than budget. That's simply because we're filing for reimbursement for ARPA funds to reimburse us for COVID-related expenditures that was not budgeted for. So if you look at that on our expenditure side, we're expecting to be, 3.3 million greater than budget. Those ARPA funds that we're requesting is about 1.1 million or so. So of that overage that we see on the expenditures, about 1.1 of that is COVID-related expenses that we are getting reimbursed for. The other 2 million is just, we've had, I think, 2 or 3 cancer claims. We've had some abnormalities with some infant births. So our plans just, these are things that can get very expensive. So, but that's the condition of our employee benefits fund. As we discussed with you all during the budget, we did increase the funding from the city going into next fiscal year on this fund to try to keep it in a positive aspect. That concludes my report. Hopefully I was fast enough for you. If y'all got any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Good job. Any questions for Kidder? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by McKellar, second by Curtis. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. M2, Kate Dietz. Okay, I got to ask you a question before we start. I know that scares you.
Yes.
Okay, Kate participates in Bring Your Baby to Work program. And how long a program is that, 10 months?
It's actually it's until they're 6 months.
So 6 months? Mm-hmm. So your baby's not here with you today. So where is your baby? Over at the water utility department?
Yes.
So somebody's watching her. You didn't just leave her baby.
No, she's not just hanging out there by herself. So with that infant care program, you have 2 helpers that you I guess recruit to help you out when you have important meetings or things like that you can't really bring. I thought about bringing her up to the podium today, but she's really talking a lot now, so I wasn't able to talk over her. So.
But you like the program?
Oh yeah, I think it's great.
Okay, great. You can proceed.
Okay. Well, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
So item M2, before you is an award consideration for the consent decree capacity group 1 implementation project, sewer sites 2E1 and 10A1. So in 2017, the city of Tyler entered into a consent decree with the Environmental Protection Agency to address our aging infrastructure on our sewer collections. And per that consent decree, Pipeline Analysis and LNV was contracted to develop a hydraulic model of the collection system where they identified potential capacity constraints. After those potential capacity constraints were identified, they field verified and collected additional data where they determined the confirmed capacity constraints. At that point, they developed their remedial measures implementation plan. And as you can see on the schedule here, right now we are in group 1 of the capacity work. There are 3 separate groups of capacity work, and we are on schedule in Q3 of 2022. So this particular group is, KSA is doing the engineering design. That contract was awarded by council February 2021. There are 3 design packages in that design, and construction phase services are also included. Their estimated construction cost is a total of $7.6 million for all 3 design packages. So as you can see here, this is the final of actually 3 Group 1 projects that we've done so far. So line 2E is located near Caldwell Zoo and West Gentry Parkway. It has both 15-inch and 10-inch gravity sewer line that will be installed. And then line 10A is over on North Tenaha Avenue. It's an additional, or it's 12-inch sewer line. All of these lines will be upgraded to increase the capacity of those lines going to the treatment plants. The improvements also include manholes, connections to existing sewer lines, pavement repairs, and other. Sealed bids were opened on this project on July 26th, 2022 at 2 p.m. There were a total of 2 bids that were received. A.E. Scholl & Company was the low bidder and is the recommended contractor. So I'm here to request that the City Council authorize the City Manager to execute a contract with A.E. Scholl & Company in the amount of $4,086,123.25 for the consent decree capacity work Group 1 implementation sewer sites 2E1 and 10A1.
Any questions or comments for Kate?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by McGee, second by Curtis. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. M3.
Great. So item M3 is an engineering services contract with KSA for the Shiloh Road elevated storage tank rehab. So the, it's kind of hard to see, I apologize. Well, this isn't.
There's no way to look. They can see it.
Okay, all right. Well, it got out of order. Anyhow, the Shiloh Road, the Shiloh Road elevated storage tank is a 500,000 gallon elevated storage tank that's near the corner of Shiloh Road and Highway 110. The tank has been out of service since 2019 after a TCEQ inspection, and it's been in need of repair in the interior and exterior, as well as some booster pump and piping modifications. And with this project, we will actually be isolating the tank in its own pressure plane. That's going to boost the pressure to surfaces in the area. It's dependent, of course, on the elevation of the connection, but that pressure will probably increase about 10 to 15 psi. Oh, sorry, go back. So this project is going to include sandblasting and coating of the interior and exterior of the tank, replacement of the tank exterior ladders, roof manway, replacement of 2 booster pumps, and also the tank fill line and some site piping modifications need to be done. That had to do with the TCEQ inspection. Installation of submersible tank mixer to help with residual control and THM control. And this contract is including technical assistance and coordination with us and our other consultants to update the water model accurately and help us or assist us in isolating that pressure plane when needed. So this is for KSA engineers. The cost of the work is $371,000, and we are anticipating completion of the design this December.
And when do you expect to have it actually up and running?
It should be up and running in the spring of 2024, beginning of the year 2024. And so I'm requesting that the City Council consider authorizing the City Manager to execute a contract with KSA Engineers for the Shiloh Road Elevated Storage Tank Rehabilitation Project in the amount of $371,000.
Any questions or comments for Kate?
I just have one question. It since M2 and M3s are related, did you say KSA for number M2 or is it Shoal? It says Shoal here.
Oh,
You said
Shoal's the contractor. KSA was the engineer.
The engineer,
on that
got it.
project on M2, and then this is just the engineering services contract for Shiloh, and that's with KSA.
Okay, thank you.
Move to approve M3.
Second.
Motion by Westbrook, second by Curtis. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Colin, thank you for being here. KSA guys, thanks for being here in case there were questions. Appreciate your presence. All right, we're down to the consent agenda. Anything need to be pulled or approved as is?
Move to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second.
Motion by Curtis, second by McKellar. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. City managers report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Some items of note that I think are important for the council to hear about as well as the community. Traffic Safety Board met last week and discussed a draft of the new traffic calming policy and the results and recommendations of the Grande reverse curve study. Y'all remember, y'all authorized that last year to move forward with, and the results have come in on that one. The Traffic Safety Board had good discussions and questions on both items. They did vote supporting measures towards with both the traffic calming policy. They'll be coming to the council relatively soon, and the recommendations for the Grande reverse curve, which will also be coming to y'all. With this, and so additionally, staff will present the results of the Grande reverse curve to the half-cent sales tax board at one of their future meetings for future funding and to start to get on that program. Solid waste, earlier we talked about just how great our solid waste department is and how great marks they receive. Part of that's because of just the incredible work that they do of being safe and keeping our communities safe. And last week, they had their drive cam recognition ceremony. And while that may sound a little technical or kind of dry, it's actually a great thing of where we have drive cams in all of our vehicles for solid waste and streets, and it's kind of recording and seeing what's the activity. If there's a irregular, activity that goes on, we can go back and check it. But we can also look to see just what are we can recognize what are some of the great safety records some of these guys have, and bring those guys forward. And so that was an opportunity for them to have their drive cam recognition. And so these are the guys who are able to maneuver through cars, residents, stationary and moving objects to do their jobs in a safe manner. And so we congratulate them for their achievements at being recognized for their safety and being able to drive 6 months a year without any accidents or incidents. Out at the airport, speaking of accidents and incidents, an American Eagle flight en route from Lafayette to DFW had to make an emergency landing at Tyler Pounds Field last week after the crew identified an issue in the cabin that was requiring them to land at the closest suitable airport. And so our airport team and additional fire, police, and EMT resources provided an outstanding response through all parts of that emergency. The aircraft landed about 9 p.m. without incident, and 35 passengers and the crew members were accommodated in the terminal. We got just as far as glowing remarks from those who were involved with Steve and his staff at just the hospitality they felt at 9 o'clock p.m. having to make an emergency landing. The report I heard was even smoke in the cabin or smoking in the airplane type situation to make them feel calm, get them taken care of, and put them on a bus about 1 a.m. To get them to their final destination at DFW. I don't know if they made their connecting flights. But we're very proud of our airport and airline staff and the collaboration between the city, the airport, the air service, and our emergency response professionals at helping out all those people in need. We had incoming freshmen from UT Tyler as part of the swoop camp, completed 3 separate service days with Keep Tyler Beautiful this summer. And so we wanted to recognize more than 300 students and staff members who helped beautify Tyler by removing litter at the Rose Rudman, working in the Tyler Rose Garden, and weeding the native plant garden and other flower beds at Woolard Park and Glass Recreation Center. So we're grateful to have their service and wish the class of 2026 the best on their first year of college. Also, next week, school does get started, and so our police department and others will be out there monitoring activities, so make sure you're monitoring the school zones and going the right speed through them. And last, we have the 50th birthday of Officer James Mcgraw And so I noticed that the other day, and I was like, you know, he's here in person. I'm not going to ask y'all to sing happy birthday to him. You can if you so wish. Choose. That's your own choice. It's not an agenda item. And so, but I do want to say happy birthday to James. And congratulations.
Is that it?
That was it, sir.
Any comments for the city manager before we adjourn?
Did the new ARF unit get utilized during the airport incident?
I hope not, because all they had to do was just bring it right to the terminal. I do know that Chief Coble was back there. No,
He's saying no.
no ARF. Okay. No holes had to be punctured in the airplane, nothing like that. Just open the door, let people walk out.
All right, well, thank you all for being here. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.
Yeah, that'd be